there, my name is Chaton and I'm back. Now, Morgan's going to join me in just a couple of moments, but I just wanted to describe what happened yesterday. You know, it's a funny thing when you decide to do something like this and you're not scripted, you're kind of on the fly. You don't know what's going to take place. And yesterday, when we were taping, we realized that we needed to take a step back. This journey of getting to after is not linear. This journey of telling your story, perhaps for the first time ever, is not going to be without fits and starts. And so that's what was happening yesterday. And I said, you know what? There are too many tears. There are too many times that we had to stop to cry it out, to tap. And I thought, we don't have to make it this hard. So as I begin this second part of our fourth video, our fourth installment of Overcoming Silence, Resilience, and Rediscovery After Domestic Violence. My disclaimer, please, if you are a victim, if you are a survivor, if you're a victor of domestic violence, but you may be in a compromising situation, make sure you put your headphones in. Make sure you bookmark this playlist. There is an entire playlist of all the videos. There will be a couple more installments, and then we will continually add installments to this particular playlist, to our domestic violence series. Getting to After will concentrate on many things having to do with women in midlife, but because it's October of 2024 and it is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we wanted to release this series now. And Morganne has gone through so much to get to where she is today, where she feels safe, where she feels in a healthy place, where she's actually able to talk about what happened in her life and with her family. But at the same time, fits and starts. Step up sometimes, two steps, and step back. So if that's you, we want to just address you today and just say, you know what? We see you. We appreciate you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for taking heed, listening to her story. It may be very similar to your own, but understand that even if you're on the other side, even if you're in your after transformation, there are ways to feel better on a daily basis about what you're going through. And one of the ways we're teaching is emotional freedom technique, which allows you to release from some of those triggers, release from some of the trauma that you've had, and release from energy that no longer serves you. And yesterday, that's what she and I both had to do. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring Morganne in, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to continue getting through her full escape, her hiding period, and then how did she get across the country and free? Hey, Morganne, welcome back.
Hi, sweetie. How are you
How
doing
you
today?
doing? Yeah, I'm
Good.
doing good. I'm doing good. I appreciate your forbearance in all of this. Yesterday was a tough day.
It was a lot, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for being so patient with me on that because it's a lot. It honestly is. And to be able to be in a situation where I'm able to finally tell my story, there's so many more memories that are coming back. And so while we're speaking on this yesterday, I was just like flooded with so much emotion. Like we had to
Yeah,
stop so many
yeah,
times, because I just kept crying. And I just needed to regroup and tap and regroup and tap. So I just want everybody to understand that this is something that's going to take time to work through. It's not going to happen really, really quick. And even when you move forward, there are some steps back that you're going to end up taking, and that's okay. But more than anything, that it's okay to get help. It's okay to get like me even talking to you about these things, but then
yeah,
also, to be able to go to therapy, to be able to have, counseling, to be able to go to have different modalities that you can
yeah,
utilize to realize that not to realize, but to help you navigate through these things. It's really important. So I just want to say thank you for being patient with me on that. I'm sorry that this is a little bit longer than we thought, but I appreciate the patience,
yeah.
willing to listen. So thank you.
You know what, Morgan? I'm so glad you said all of that. I feel like this is not, everyone has after stories. People have before and afters about weight loss, about redoing their house, about revamping a garment. Um, this is bigger than all that. you know, and it didn't just include you and your children. I love how you call them babies. They are so big and not babies. Okay.
You know what it is? It's because the youngest two are right next to each other.
Yeah.
They brought up like we've always affectionately called them the babies. So sorry.
But I mean, mine right at this more present moment, going on 23 and and 18, going on 19, and they still feel that way. And I think part of why we're doing this too is because it does speak not just to our daughters,
Mm.
and the relationships that they create and allow, but also teaching our sons not just how we want them to treat the people, that the women that they um, have relationship with, but also to spot things for their sisters, for their cousins, for their female friends, and when they see psychosis in their friends, to also be protective against that as well. Because I really do feel, and I know we're going to talk about this in episode 5 and beyond, that our boys sometimes they sweet. They're a little loopy though. So it's like these are hard conversations. You have to like slog through these conversations sometimes with our kids. And I think in midlife, which is why it's so tough, you have children that can be from any age. You could be in midlife and be pregnant to having and be a grandmother, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so you have all of that gamut of things. And so you're raising kids, you're raising teenagers, you could be nursing a child, you could be taking care of an elderly parent and also trying to transform who you are or get through and get after. So let's jump in. Yesterday you left off, you were ushering your children out. You said like a mother hen.
Yeah.
You're making sure they were protected. And I thought today, kind of as this culmination is, you know, what happened? Like just take me through right after you escaped, you left him in the house. What happened next?
So immediately after that, the children and I had already previously had escape plans. So we
Okay.
had to have those hard conversations so that if I had to stay behind to protect and slow him down, they knew where to go to a
Wow.
neighbor's house down the street. So we just went straight there because that was our plan. Within the first 24 hours, we made sure that we um, got all the legal documentation taken care of, so
Mm,
the emergency restraining order, the emergency custody, things like that, because
wow.
there's a whole list of people you have to make sure you get those items to protect yourself and but more importantly to protect the children, right?
Mm.
So those were the steps that we went from there. After that, we ended up bouncing around to quite a few different places. I actually had to, because he was looking for us. I mean, like looking for us. Everybody in town knew he was looking for us because all my friends were hitting me up. They're like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And I said,
And is this a small town that you were in?
so at that point it was. It's a smaller town.
Okay.
And so they were like, "Hey, your husband's blowing up our phones. Are you okay? Where'd you go? What's going on?" I said, "I can't tell you any of that information." But I said, I was like, our part of our story. So we had to finally walk away. Right. So we had to reach out to people from like decades ago, friends from decades ago that he had no clue of, so that we
Okay.
could ride
Okay.
with them so that he couldn't access them because he was even in the town that we were in an hour away. That's where my mom had lived in
Mm,
that area. So he was canvassing the areas of all of my friends in that area. So we had to completely be with a whole nother group of people that he had no knowledge of to stay safe. So then after all of that part is taking place, then like keep in mind like we're constantly going like going back and forth to court, me to file things, going to the schools. At one point I realized that I couldn't even take the children to school anymore
yeah.
because he had his friends looking for us to follow us afterwards. So then I had to let the teachers know I had to provide them with the proper documentation, the principal and
To
everything,
pull them out.
pull them out.
And
Uh,
how was that process? I mean, we've never talked about any of this. What was their response like? Because I know that when it's time for us to do hard things, sometimes we stay so in our head and we overthink so much that then that overthinking slows us down. And I know that you've often said, um, sometimes it's just 5 minutes that you need. So how was the response with the school?
not the way you would want them to. Like
Okay.
there was so much judgment and them looking at me like I was crazy and as if I was doing something wrong because they had ended up missing. I had called them in for like 3 or 4 days. And because there was so much chaos like building up to that time period, the kids had missed quite a bit of school to keep them safe,
Mhm.
right? So I was almost getting in trouble with the schools
Yeah.
for them not being in attendance. And I'm like, you don't understand, you know what I mean? So it wasn't as understanding or loving and
As
kind as you would think it should be, right? Kind of thing.
I have no idea how it would be. That's the thing. So do you have any thoughts or words of advice in terms of the best way to navigate it? I mean, how people treat you is how they decide to treat you. We all know that going off and responding kind for kind doesn't work because then that's how situations escalate. And no matter what, the woman is typically at fault. That's how people view us.
Mhm.
Um, any words of wisdom on handling that the best way?
Your job is to keep yourself and your children alive. So people aren't going to like you. They're going to talk nonsense about you. They're going to spread rumors and lies because that's just what people do. So do what you need to do in order to keep yourself safe. Do things the right way. Always do things like above and beyond reproach so that it can't come back on you in any way, shape, or form to the best of your ability. But with that being said, there's sometimes where you're just in that fight or flight and you're just looking at this like one thing right here. You cannot
That's
see
right.
anything else. Like let me just get here. Okay, let me get here. Let me get here. I can't even try to um entertain all these other things that I know are priorities also, but I just have to get this one step first.
Yes.
So that's one nice thing is later on through our coaching and things like that, there'll be women will be able to have access to the steps to take, who you need
Yeah.
to provide that documentation to. Like people don't think about even having to provide it to extracurricular activities.
Hmm.
So like the coaches and things like that. So they have a paper copy with them. So if he does try to come and take the children from those
You
moments, 'cause
can't.
remember that tight schedule, no one where you're at, he can't do that. So it protects you and the children too. So
Okay, so all right, so you're moving around a lot. You're with people. It's interesting again. I know this idea of wanting to be secretive. At that point, you had to reveal quite a bit. That must have been really hard.
it was because you have to remember, like, we hid everything, like, from everybody, constantly wearing this mask of everything's fine, we're perfect, we're this perfect family, we have this beautiful house and we have the cars and he has the job and the kids are always well put together. But, like, everything had to present as just so. So then the couple of people that did know, there was just a couple of people that did know because there was a family that helped us multiple times that we did run to.
Mhm.
Um, and so they helped us stay safe a couple different times. So they knew about it. But um, the hard part is when you're actually finally talking on it, speaking on
Yeah.
it. It's terrifying. Even to this day, I'm scared that somehow it's going to come back and I'm going to have to I'm going to be punished for saying the truth. You know what I mean? Or that it's going to be used against me somehow. So that's always an underlying fear because they get in our heads really, really
Yeah.
good with that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
manipulation is really good.
Yeah. You're safe.
Yeah, I know, right?
You're safe. And you're doing so amazing.
Thank
You
you.
just are. And a lot of people may not know it. And for our listeners who have gone through this, are going through this, um, just saying a bunch of affirmations doesn't work as well as we wish they would. That's why we teach emotional freedom technique because it's a way of if you get strength for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 20 minutes, you'd be surprised what you're able to do. It may be between you doing the restraining order or or grabbing your kid out of school and not because you don't have the strength. So with you getting with friends from a long time ago, I know there was a period of time. Now obviously during this period of time you had when you finally left, I didn't know. So we will tell our story at another time, but I didn't know where you were. And from my perspective, and again, every woman I think has to make their own decision about how to handle this, and I don't begrudge the fact that you were like, I can't tell you. um, but friends or people adjacent, there is something to be said for having a safe word, for having us, for having something that is like a code so that someone knows, so you escaped and you had people. Of course, I was a friend from like random across the country who you'd never really met. Um, but these idea, just be thinking about ways, and I'm just talking to the audience of what you can do. I love that you had plans, escape routes, that you had a neighbor that was safe. And again, it's all trust. When you have a person who's looking for you all over town, literally like something in a really terrible psychological thriller is what you lived through, a psychological thriller. Um, so now I know that you stay with someone. I mean, I remember you mentioning to me that you just recently that you stayed with someone for a period of time that you hadn't seen in many years. Why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, so after we were staying with a couple of different families an hour away, we ended up going to the safe house at that point in that town. So we stayed at the shelter for it wasn't very long, like maybe it was less than 3 weeks. Um, and then from that moment on, because he was like on our heels constantly. So even in the town we were in, like he was getting information about us, even though we were in the safe house. So then he even found us in the safe house. So then we had to leave. So the conversation with the women there was, now you're putting the other women in danger. We need to ask you to leave. And I was blown away because I was like, wait a second, you're here to protect me too. But the location was given off, right? So now we had to go ahead
No
and take.
longer a safe house. Yeah.
Mhm, it's no longer a safe house. So then at that point, I had run into a friend just by chance, from when I was like 14, dude,
Mm.
out of nowhere, just like haven't seen her since I was 14. She says to me, I tell her a little bit of my story, and she tells me, she's like, "Give me your phone." She puts her phone number in my phone, her address.
Mm.
She says, "We live so high up in the mountains in the country, like he will never find you." He said, she goes, "We have a cabin on our property that you and the kids can stay in until we figure something else out. Just come, right?"
Mhm.
She says, "There's like zero reception up there, so you have got to get like a printout of the territory of the land." Um, and then call me and then call me also as soon as you get into town because you won't be able to reach me because it's hit or miss. So we ended up getting really, really high up in the mountains, tiny little town, beautiful town. Like just
Yeah.
it's so peaceful up there. And so we had our moment of peace within the chaos. We were finally safe. Like I'll never forget this one picture of me and like we're out. It's like it's all mountains. It's all mountains and pasture. It's farming. It's,
Mhm.
agriculture land and everything. And I just had my hand on my chest and my eyes were closed like this. And was the first time like I was able to breathe for a second, you know, knowing that he was so far away and that he couldn't know where we were at. There's no way he could have followed us this far. So for at least a minute, we had escaped.
And how many hours was it from your home, your family home?
That's a really good question. So that we were about between 6 to 8 hours away from.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Like completely on the other
Ooh.
side of the Rockies, like way over because
Right.
it had too much pool where we were in that area, in that corridor. So that's how he was always able to find us was because of the people that he knew. So being completely in a whole nother jurisdiction is what helped get us through this. So with this happening, it was the beginning of a school year, I mean, so getting the children set up in a new school, a new environment, us still looking over our shoulders, it was it was intense. Me having to go back into the work field was really, really
Mm.
difficult because of all of my disabilities and because of being so sickly. Like that was a huge strain. So you have the emotional stressor of looking over your shoulder and being hunted, and then also having to physically the manual labor
Right.
and then trying to get your children set up in a new area where they feeling safe in school, getting their
And
education.
it's totally new for them. And they're young, they're
They're in
babies.
grades. Yeah, that was a lot. So with the love and support of our friends that we had up there, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have been able to get through that section of our life because then, dude, right after that is when COVID hit,
The pandemic.
the pandemic hit. So then with that, that was a whole nother world of crazy for everybody. But then as far as the proceedings for court, that made it things even harder, right? So what I ended up doing is just so you ladies know, anytime you file legal documents, it's going to have the county seal on it. And so that always gives off a location of where you're at. Okay, so
Mm.
just keep that in mind. So I kept going back, driving back to where we were, so that we could. So it had the seal that all everything was being filed in the exact same place, so
So
that
it looked as if you were there.
looked as if I was still local,
Yeah.
right? So I did that for quite a few months until COVID hit, and then everything was via Zoom. Everything was had to be done differently. Um, so that took quite a bit of like adjustment to try to figure that out. Um,
And during that time, I mean, we talked the other day about how you feel about shelter. So at this point, you weren't using shelters, but you were using some kind of aid. And I remember one day, because during a lot of this period of time, you and I were not in contact. When we finally got back in contact, it was in COVID. I mean, it wasn't 2019, it was 2020 when we finally like reconnected. And I remember because for me, again, it's like this idea. We did a little drop yesterday about, or the other day about a smile. And the thing is that so much of it still, I still didn't understand, even though I wanted to be so supportive. And I know you were at a food pantry, and I thought, I don't get, like, I didn't understand. I knew you lived in a mansion, you know what I mean? I didn't get it. And again, here again, why it's so important to sometimes just view things as face value. Like you have to just view things as someone tells you they're at a food pantry or someone tells you they're in a shelter. I don't know. It's from my mama, I guess, that I could. It's a gift that not only did I believe you, but that it was like, okay, all right, she's in as opposed to, well, a bunch of questions that are actually negative, defensive ridden questions that make the person feel even less. Because I know you agree, because you've said this before, that part of the problem is people constantly making you feel less and less and less, and you've already had that. So you're free. You're going back and forth 8 hours. It's crazy. Your kids are in school. The pandemic hits. And obviously, you're trying to, he was, not showing up for court, things like that nature. Um, I know you had issues with restraining orders. We're not going to mention any judges' names, but there were issues with restraining orders. So um, we're not legal professionals, but that was there. That was an issue, right?
That was a huge problem. And so within the first 24 hours of leaving, as like I mentioned, I filed them for emergency custody and for the emergency restraining order. But then after that, a judge has to grant a permanent one. And so my husband specifically would get the times wrong or ask for an extension or couldn't show up for this or that or that or that. He was really, really good at like getting people to do things that should never happen. So um it got not denied, but it got put off for so long. It was absolutely crazy. Um, yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of lost my thought on that one, except for that it just took a lot of time to be able to get these things accomplished. So be patient. And it's going to take some effort and energy, to get all this done, but it's possible. It's absolutely
Yes.
possible.
Yeah, you did it.
Mhm. And then as far as, with you making the statement about the finances and things like that, you're absolutely right. But remember, like we had to walk away from all of that.
Of
So as
course.
soon as I did, like everything got cut off. Everything got cut off. Like I had to like ditch my credit cards. I had to ditch the debit, everything like that. What cash I had on me was very, very little at that time. So that's all I had. So he even went to the extent of like taking my disability. You know what I mean? To making sure that I couldn't take care of myself. He wanted to make sure that I had to come home because he knew that I had the children to take care of and I had absolutely no way to do so. So he made it as hard for me as possible. So when I speak on this, when I talk to you about the pre-planning side of this is what we want to also help teach you and give you the access to. Because nobody had any answers for me because our story was so different and so drastic. Like throughout this whole process, the legal entities, the sheriff's office, the judicial system, they're like, well, we don't know what to tell you. We don't know where to
Yeah.
send you, that kind of thing. And it was so frustrating because I'm like, how do you not know what
Yeah.
to tell me to do? Like, this is your job. Like, how do you not know? So all of this was trial and error. And that's why, that's what initiated starting this whole program, this project. What we're doing is wanting to make sure that women have that 5 minute head start because it literally just having the knowledge
Hmm.
can mean your life. That
Yeah.
extra set of paperwork that you have in one place, have all of it together instead of having to go to this place and that place and this place and that place. And then, do you have a vehicle to get there? No, I don't. How do I get there? Do I have a phone? Yes, but it doesn't do this and this. Can I get this printed out? That kind of stuff. So to be able to have everything in one place is going to be really helpful for these women from here on out.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
Obviously, we're talking about a state across the country, and now you live on the East Coast near me.
Mhm,
We've mentioned that you live in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I'm in Maryland, outside of Baltimore.
mhm,
So there was a time when you decided I have to leave the house, and then there was a time you said I have got to leave the state.
yeah.
And I have my side of that story because that's the night that you called me and said I have to leave. I have to flee now. I have to take my children out of school, even though you were 8 hours away. I know that at several points he had found out where you lived because,
Mhm,
again, mistakes in the court system, revealing your address, um, and getting in your house.
mhm.
Yep, getting in your
Well,
house.
and that's the thing, because when we were in the safe house, back an hour away from where we were, when we had first left, we had to go to the extent of like changing our names. Like
Hmm.
we had to get something that's called an ACP, which is an address confidentiality program. So basically, the state gave us completely new identities. So when we moved to this place 8 hours away, we had to take on that persona, that whole different person, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And portray ourselves to people like that. And honestly, that was really, really hard for me because once again, I'm having to not be real. I'm having to, um,
It's like it's following you. And that's why,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, and so most people don't have to go to that extent, which is why one of the reasons why this series, Overcoming Silence, is so important. Resilience is possible. Rediscovery, rebirth is it's a possibility. It's a
Mhm.
possibility. Um, so I know there was an evening where, he knew that the judicial system was kind of closing in on him,
Mhm.
and so he asked you to come back.
Mhm.
And of course, you weren't talking to him at that time, but I remember you saying that, but he had access to his children through supervised visits, in a neutral location, and he wanted to talk to your youngest daughter one night.
Mhm.
And during that conversation is when he asked you to come back, and then quickly, when you said no because of the strength that you had garnered, he threatened you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the conversation looked like this. He called my daughter, and I had answered the phone, and I didn't look at it because she was sleeping, and it was him on the other line, and I was blown away. Like I was blown away that I was hearing his voice on the other line, but shocked. And then that conversation consisted of him pleading, be like, please, drop the restraining order, drop all these charges, drop this, this, and that. I can't go to prison. They're going to do this and this to me in there. You can't have that on your conscience. You're a good woman. You wouldn't do that to me, like the whole manipulation kind of thing. And I just remember telling him, I was like, this is out of my hands. I said, I was begging and pleading with you to change your actions for decades, but you wouldn't. I said, and now I don't have control over this because you've gone and you've broken the law so many times, broken the restraining order so many times, like in so many different counties. I can't cover up 5 different counties for you, that kind of thing. So then he quickly went from begging and pleading, like the victim, into threatening me with my life again. So then at that point, the part I didn't get to tell you is he had found where we were. Oh, we just mentioned that because of then the courthouse accidentally not removing my real address when he broke the restraining order one time.
Yeah.
So it didn't have my ACP on it. So that's when he started stalking us and like coming into my home when
Yeah.
we were gone, that kind of thing. So then that night that phone call happened, it went to, I know where you're at. I'm coming for you. Right. There's certain verbiage that he would use. And so then a conversation prior to that he had with my son, my son came up to me and he said, Mom, I don't know what this means, but Dad said to tell you da 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 da. And those were words that he would use when he would be hurting me, right? Like, don't, like, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. Like, that kind of thing. So that already put me on high alert that he was at that state where he didn't care what was going to happen. He was going to take me out and everybody else around us, and it didn't matter who was in the crossfire kind of thing. So, um, I immediately started making preparations like to my vehicle so that I could like I put a tow hitch on my car so that I could put like a tiny little trailer because I knew we were going to have to leave and I we just had to go. We had to go, right? And I knew it wasn't going to be safe anywhere in that area. We had made arrangements. It's crazy how things work. We had made arrangements to go north to Oregon, right? We were headed that direction first. And the courthouse, I had to ask the attorney, I had to let the attorney know, hey, I need to leave the state, otherwise it's kidnapping. So I had to go through my attorney and it's like, hey, I have
Yeah.
to, we're going to go north. Somehow he got my address of where we were going because I have to provide a physical address so they know I'm not kidnapping the child. Somehow he got that. So then I get a phone call from from him to my son telling me, "Hey, I know that you're going here. Tell your mom I'm coming for her." Right? So in a matter of 24 hours, I got five separate phone calls from people, just five five separate people saying, "I don't think you should go north, go home, like go back east, like go back to North Carolina, like you need to
I
go back to
remember it. I
North Carolina."
remember.
Right. And the people that called were like, I was like, out of like one of my friends from South Africa, like literally, I was like, are you kidding me? And then my mom and then a couple other people. And I was like, okay, so the very last phone call I got, I was like, okay, this is where we need to go. So the thing is it was in the middle of a blizzard. So this is like like Christmas weekend, right? In the middle of December, Colorado winter blizzard. All the passes are closed. It's crazy. So I ended up putting chains on my car to try to get over the passes. That's a whole nother story. Like that was amazing how we were able to get through that. Still don't know. Then the people that we once we got to Denver on the other side of the passes, because we got snowed in and stuck. So when we got to the other side of the passes, the people that helped us there, we had to stay put for 3 days. And then I drove cross country in a matter of like, it was like we got here
20
on the 5th. We left on the 3rd and got here on the 5th.
24 hours. It was like 30 hours.
Yeah. So
I
drove.
don't, I mean, that's what I mean. Like, we would need a mini series. We would need like 30, 50 hours to describe everything. Maybe we'll write a book. Maybe we'll do a movie. Um, this is not about self-promotion. This is about showing that strength comes and things are possible. Now, at this point, I am a privy to every little thing that's going on. And I was
Yeah.
like a lunatic because I was on every moment. And I remember that one of the things, again, even in the heart of the worst chaotic thing for the kids, sometimes you have to add, you have to they knew what was going on and they were not fighting you. I mean, they were like, we got to go. Like they got it.
Mhm.
The kids, the dogs, the trailer, you know, and in the midst of all of this, remember we're talking to a contractor here that in order to pack her house into this little trailer, she built the trailer in her living room with tape
I
and then
forgot.
stacked the things up so she knew what she could bring and couldn't bring. So you have to you there can be chaos, but you got to find the clarity. That's where the tapping comes in. It's like you've got to find the clarity. Imagine that you had other modalities, but you didn't have tapping yet. Imagine if you'd had to have tapping at that moment. But what I remember the most was trying to add some levity, trying to add something for the kids. So what I would do at home when I was here in Maryland is I was, of course, following them on the map and then find little locations, along the way and be like, well, look out the window at this mile marker. Look at this. Here's this building, this old library. I mean, the kids probably could care less, but I was like, anything to distract,
Mhm.
because it was long. It was big. All right. So you
What
made it. Go ahead.
I know to add on to that, I want to say like what a blessing it was that my children never fought against me in those moments. Like they fought against me plenty of other times, but it wasn't at those moments because when mom said now, like listen
Yeah.
and obey now, you know what I mean? Like this is what we have to do. They're like, okay, but because we had practiced We
Mhm.
had we had practiced so many times. This is what we do. Here's our go bags. Like this, like they need to grab the go bags, grab the animals, and you just get in the car. You don't ask questions. Like if you're lucky, take your shoes. Like if you don't have them on, grab them. Like if you can't grab them, just go. We'll figure it out. You got an extra pair in your you've got slippers in your go bag. So just preparing for this is what is really, really crucial. But the fact that they always had a good attitude about it and didn't make me feel bad,
Yeah.
never once made me feel bad that mommy had to make them do things very quickly. And I
Yeah.
couldn't, and that was the other thing, Chaton, like I couldn't always explain why.
No.
So that's an important conversation to have with your children too, that there may not always be time to answer why. I just need you to be obedient right now. Like just
And
listen.
that they trust you. And I think that, now you've got all these teenagers, right? And young adults. And that trust is a hard thing in teenagers. Like they think they know everything. And I've watched your boys, especially the way they love you, and it's really beautiful. Especially when your husband was trying to get anything else to happen in that. So I'm going to ask you now because this is pretty sensitive. Your husband, you made it across the country.
Mhm.
You feel okay to talk about what happened next?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Just like everybody else needs to understand that this is like really deep. So to protect your peace, just
Yeah.
know my truth is really, really heavy. And so I just care about protecting you with it. But I feel like by telling you what happened, it might be able to give you the strength to take the steps that you need to take
Yeah.
to keep yourself and your children safe, you know?
So I know that you had gotten to, you know, I can mention your state. Yes, North
Oh
Carolina.
yeah, totally. Yeah.
And you were staying with a family that was giving you a safe haven,
Mhm.
really just for a couple weeks because between the time that you got there, so quick, so amazing, you were finally in my time zone. I was so happy bouncing off the ceilings. But before I even had a chance to get there, tragedy struck. I always will appreciate and love that you got there on a Wednesday, and literally within less than a week, you had school for your kids. You had found a beautiful apartment. Like you were set. And that was knowing that, you still had to go back to court, but you had that injunction that was going to allow you to be on the East Coast for so many weeks. And then you knew that there was going to be a divorce and things were going to be final. So, but before that could take place, tragedy did strike.
Right. So we got there on the 5th. And like you said, we got everything set up so that we could go ahead and get things taken care of. I remember uh, the so my son's got a phone call, and my youngest son got a phone call, and thankfully my oldest son had the like mental clarity to record the conversation. But this consisted of his father calling him to let him know that you know he had to teach his girlfriend a lesson, and that it was the same lesson that he was about to teach his mom. He commenced to, from that point on, to say a lot of other things, and basically that if he could not carry out what he was going to do to me, then he asked my youngest son to take my life. So so that happened that evening on the 14th. I didn't even hear about that conversation till the next morning because the boys went to sleep, right? They recorded the conversation. They were scared to come downstairs and tell me. Um, that afternoon, my oldest daughter called and spoke with the people that we were staying with and said, "Hey, listen, there's something going on the news." She said, "I think, I think, I think Dad was part of a murder." He says, "I think that there's something going on. They're looking for him." She says it's what it was. She's like, a woman lost her life, and we're pretty sure it's Dad." So she goes like, "I need to make sure my mom and my siblings are okay. Can you please have them call me immediately?" So at that point, um, I was on high alert. And my oldest son then came forward and shared the message with us. And we were like, "Why didn't you share this last night?" And he was like, "I was
Because,
scared." He was like, "I was tired and I didn't want to come out of the room. I didn't want to get in trouble." And I was like, "Baby." So he shares that message with us. We instantly call the police and have them come. Um, I tell the two adults and my oldest son go this direction. I took the youngest two and the animals with me to go a different direction. I tell the police, listen, this is what's going on. This is what's going on back in Colorado. These are the threats that were made. This is all the court orders. Here's the restraining orders. Here's the, you know, the everything, right, that's going on. He's coming for me, and you need to be aware of this man. And he's extremely dangerous because nobody would believe me. Like
Mhm.
nobody would ever believe me when I would tell them he's a threat. Like he is so dangerous, but because I'm a minority and he's not, nobody would believe me. So then we take off, end up having, so the police are there, we give them all the information, we take off, go the separate directions. They followed us to where we were going to the place we were going to be staying. We weren't able to keep the animals there, right? So we had to turn around, come back to
Wow.
drop the animals off because, and keep in mind, like we knew he knew where we were at this point.
Right. Right.
He knew we were cross country. He knew where we were. So we take the animals back real quick to leave them because our lives are more important, even though we love our animals so much. I'm pulling back around and down the street, and I turn onto the street, and I'm looking down the street, and the police are still there. And I'm like, this isn't right. There's something really not right. So I'm expecting to see him. Like I'm expecting like
Mm,
he's there or
mm.
something like that because they're still there. And it had been like about 30, 40 minutes, right? So I pull in, I back into the driveway to let the dogs out. I tell the children, go put the dogs in the house. And the police officer comes up to me and he was like, Mrs. Bustos, I need to speak with you. And I was like, go ahead. He says, it's concerning your husband. I said, okay. So he said, I need to speak to you privately. And I was like, whatever needs to be said can be said to these two adults
Yeah,
also, because they need to know they're a part of this. They're putting their lives in jeopardy and danger to
that's
keep us
right.
safe. They have the right
Right.
to know what's going on. So then at that moment, he looks at me and he's like, I just want to let you to know that, Mr. Bustos is no longer a threat. And I kid you not, Chaton, I looked him dead in his eyes and I laughed. I laughed and I said, no longer a threat. I said, you need to tell me what that means because no longer a threat to you and a threat to me means two totally different things because you
That's
guys
right.
have been telling me he's not a threat for the last 13 years. Like, what does that mean? And they said, Mr. Bustos is dead. And I said, okay. At that moment, the woman started screaming and like holding on to me and crying. And I'm like holding and consoling her.
You have to consult somebody. Your kids are there.
And I'm like holding her. And the exact thoughts that went through my mind as I'm holding this woman is like I didn't cry. I had no response. I'm like holding her, and my thought was, "Oh my God, we're safe. It's all." I'm like, I was like, "We're safe." And then the very next thought was, "My kids don't have
I know.
their." So come to find out, what ended up happening is when he called my son that night, he had already taken his girlfriend's life, and he was on the run. He was calling to say goodbye to his son and telling him that he was coming for me. And if not, then he was going to have ask his son to take my life for him. So then within the next, that happened in the evening of the 14th. So then that next morning, in another town, uh, he was surrounded and ended up taking his own life. So at that point, the thing is like they couldn't, the police couldn't even tell me all this information. Like what I'm relaying to
Right.
you, I got within a 24-hour period because they could only give me so much information. I had to
That's right.
contact the police back in
Well,
Colorado
of course, because it is still like, who are you?
out of
You know,
jurisdiction too, right? So they
right.
couldn't tell me everything. So because of the fact that we were still legally married, I was next of kin. So then I had to go and identify the body. So even though we just got to North Carolina and got set up there, signed the contract for the apartment and all that jazz, we had to now turn around and go back to Colorado because I had to
To deal with all the things.
take care of all that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I think when we say it's heavy, it's heavy. And I appreciate your bravery because we're not over it. It's 3 years in a couple of months. 3 years is not a lot of time. It's 36 months. It's not a lot of time. Um, you did amazing things. And in the midst of all of that, got her kids in school. In the midst of all of that, I know you had to move your kids around and, do different things to keep them not just safe, but also safe from the notoriety, safe from the bullying, safe from people are so like, anyway, you by yourself, like I'm talking about a cape on your back, like, akin to Superman. It's the kind of stuff that I saw from you. And I'm sorry that anyone loses their life, especially this other woman. Um, One of the reasons why we decided to do this entire series was because domestic violence is so real and people just think that it's not. They just think, why don't you leave? Or they just think it's your fault or you married badly or it's so much bigger than that. So, Morgan, I got to ask you, I know there's so much more. We're not going to talk about this anymore. But fast forward 3 years, there's still stuff,
Mm.
bills and court stuff, and I know you were sued and or they tried to make a suit, you settled, or they dropped the case, just different things, and that all comes down to this whole process of getting to after. And again, when this happens to a woman, it doesn't just happen to her. It happens to her kids, it happens to her family. And it isn't just about being brave. Obviously, we have a huge spiritual life and a support system and a spiritual family, and that helped. And you had people that helped along the way, but you had to first be willing, at some point, you had to let your guard down a little bit.
Mm.
And I'm just grateful that you had the wisdom to believe that he could take a life. I always kind of knew. I never met him, but I always kind of knew, and I thought it was going to be you. And I hate that it was anybody. I hate that it was anybody. I hate it. I hate that that happened. I do. And at the same time, I am grateful that you left because I believe it would have been your entire family
Yeah.
just because.
Well, and that was a conversation I had to have with the children too. And that was one of my biggest concerns because they knew if they saw him that I always stayed back to slow him down and they were to leave. But I always knew they wouldn't. And so that was terrifying thinking that they were going to get caught in the crossfire because when he goes black, like, you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm just glad that everybody's safe on this end in
Yeah.
the sense of physically there is the whole healing and the emotional side of this. You know what I mean? The emotions that come through this and that's why I tell you, yes, EFT is amazing and all these different modalities are, but you there is nothing wrong with getting help, with getting therapy,
Yeah.
with talking to counselors. There's so many different amazing techniques that you can use out there. We'll be able to provide some information on these things too that really help my children and I get through all of this, but it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. And being open, that's the thing, babe, is like being open to learn about new things, different modalities that you're like, that's not
Yeah.
medication. I'm not doing that.
Yeah. That seems weird. Yeah.
Yeah,
And the,
yeah.
and the thing is that, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, just that like our bodies are beautifully made. And
Yes.
so they can really heal themselves if you allow them to and have the right tools to do so.
Yeah.
But how important it is really to get the emotional help that you need because that actually makes you stronger. People look down on getting help, but it's I think in this day and age after COVID and after everything, like everybody, I think everybody should go to therapy personally, have a safe place to talk. You know what I
I
mean?
think is great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, Well, Morgan, listen, I know we have one more episode we're going to do. We're going to really talk a little bit more about the after period. But thank you for being like a champion through this. Um, this is longer than we wanted it to be, but it is what it is. I hope you get to the end and hear my voice right now. But if it takes you a while to get through this content, it's okay too. We do have a magazine that goes into some of her story, but more so, what are little things you can put into your day that can help? And it's not a domestic violence magazine, but it is a magazine centered this particular time on some domestic violence awareness because, of course, it's October. The magazine is called Getting to After. Of course, it's a magazine for midlife women, and you can get it by going to bit.ly/ all uppercase, the letter G, the number 2A, MAG. So capital G, the number 2, capital A, MAG dash the word launch. And what will happen is you'll sign up and then immediately you'll be able to get the magazine for free. And we go into some of the things, small things, like to break the chain sometimes of the post abuse cycle, because the guilt, the shame, the embarrassment, the silence, the reason why we call this overcoming silence is because when you're able to talk through your trauma and safely do it, it actually dismantles walls. It dismantles energy in such a powerful way. And even though we've cried and, we sniffing a lot and stuff, um, it's just heavy. But the power that it held over you before, it's not the same power.
Mhm.
It's not. So stick around, please. We also want to let you know that we also have a workbook that's also free. And you can get that by going to bit.ly/ all caps G2A dash L, B as in boy, the number 1. So that's bit.ly/ G2A dash LB1. And in that workbook, we teach you how to use emotional freedom technique, but we also break down for you what are limiting beliefs. Like what is that? Because limiting beliefs many times is what keeps women, especially in midlife. You've created these experiences have happened to you, and then you're like, well, this is who I am now, and I can't go any further, right? And we specifically decided to attack limiting beliefs first because Morgan was like, it's limiting beliefs that keep people stuck. We have to talk about this. So that was our first workbook. There will be more workbooks to come, more magazines to come, more podcast episodes to come. Our podcast episodes for now will be dropping on Monday mornings at 7 a.m. Eastern Time. Be sure to tap in. We will be doing emotional freedom technique, and we'll be talking to lots of people and really moving through some of those things in midlife. Morgan, you're a champion. Do you have any last words you want to say?
Um, I just want to say thank you to you for allowing me to be on the other side of this and helping me get through this, and the love and support that you provided played a big role. So to the women out there, allow people to be your friends. Allow them to help you because they want to. Um, because you can do it alone, but it's extremely difficult. And when you have at least one person in your corner, like I had with Chaton, it makes a world of difference. So be brave and just take that step. And there's plenty of resources out there, and then also resources here. And we want to help. We want to help.
Yes.
We want to
Yeah.
help get to your after of all of
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. So, episode 5 is going to be lighter. We're still going to talk a lot about some of the things that you can do. So stay tuned. We'll see you next week where we're talking about some of the things you can think about in your getting to after. All right. So peace, love. We'll talk to you soon. I'm Chaton Morrison, of course, Princess of Positivity. This is my co-host, also interviewee, Morgan Bustos. Thanks for watching.
Bye.